I'm waiting for Facebook to sync up. So. Alright guys, welcome. This is another Tuesday, and this is another time that we would like to welcome you to our Growth Clinic Live. I'm joined per usual by our Growth Clinic mentor, Matt, my good friend and a mentor, and a guy who you can pick his brain about all kinds of smart, sophisticated things, some of which we're going to be talking today about, right? So, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great there, Anton. It's good to see you here, and glad to get it going again.
Yep, definitely. Well, guys, today's subject, let's jump right in. We have called it the revolution, and we're basically saying it started a long time ago. It's shifting to a different gear these days, from what it seems like, and we invite you to join it. And so, what in the world are we talking about? So, one of the pieces of things before we kind of jump into the news specifically, let me mention just one thing, that we started sending out the email that has insights in it. And so, you probably have received one last week. One is coming out tomorrow. It has insights. We work on those really hard. The next one is going to be about customer acquisition cost. It is increasing for every single one of us. And what do you do? Right, so it's becoming more and more expensive to acquire a new customer. What do we do? Then next week we're going to have somebody joining us. So this is going to be essentially almost like our first time a three-way conversation here. So those of you who are listening to us right now through audio, you'll definitely see that again, not through visual kind of piece, but through audio. We're going to be joined by another Growth Clinic mentor and a good friend of ours, Daniel, who will be talking to us about optimizing yourself. And he's got a podcast that's called Chasing Energy, and he's an expert on energy, life energy. And we always say that, I think Matt, you and I, we talked a little bit about it this week, and we said, you know what, if you don't have energy, if you wake up in the morning, you don't have energy, how in the world are you supposed to do everything you're supposed to do today, right? So the reason being, Daniel's going to be a regular person here, you will see, is because he's just a great person to talk about energy. By the way, he's expert on coffee. We should probably ask him next time a couple of things on that. So,
coffee, what else? Sprouting, right?
Sprouting, that's right. He's got a prototype that he's developing.
There. Yeah, maybe he'll give us a little insights there, what's going on. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So that's one thing. You're going to see Daniel join us next time. So maybe that's it's going to liven up the conversation here quite a bit. So another thing you're going to see us doing going forward is that we always wanted to learn from somebody we're talking about growth here, right? We're building a community for growth. We want to learn from successful companies and successful people out there, right? How in the world have they done that? And we're going to be interviewing folks starting here locally in Chattanooga, and we'll go outside of Chattanooga very quickly. So we'll ask them questions in terms of how did you get started? Walk us step by step through the process. So in a sense, small business owner, a person who runs a certain department within a larger maybe organization, I can follow that framework. And so we're going to be figuring out the growth equation. So what are the factors that played in that kind of growth of the organization? So again, you can get something out of this. So I think that's it as far as the organizational stuff. Just visit the website. Stuff is out there. We keep constantly posting, updating it. It's kind of like a work in progress. So this is not our full-time job. Maybe that's why you see us taking it one step at a time. So we do have full-time jobs, and we're just trying to give back here as much as possible. So all right, Matt, are we ready to jump into the news?
I think we can do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Ready to get going at it here. So,
all right. Yeah. Well, sounds good. So again, let's talk about it here, guys. Revolution. Matt, what in the world are we talking about today, right? What revolution? And join what should I join? What is going on out there?
Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking a lot about just kind of the change up in kind of media and content and strategy, right? Like we all see it, we all know it. right?
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier as far as like you turn on the regular television, if anybody even still has that, right, to watch ABC, NBC, Sunday, like just these old commercials, right, geared towards 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, right? Like
It doesn't
changing.
feel right. It doesn't feel the same, right?
Yeah.
There's something-
it's changed, right? We know it's changed. It's moved on here, right? And we see things on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn, all these things. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's changing at such a fast pace, right? Where normally the media buy cycle used to be big companies, you would start committing about now, maybe a couple months here for the following year media. All the television spots, you're going to have 30-second commercials, 15-second commercials, and buy all that up. It's moved more towards an auction system out there, right? As far as how much you're going to pay, how popular is it, what's your target there. That turnover is much shorter too, right? So you don't have 3-6 months to go out and produce a long commercial, right? Like you need things that are a little bit more relevant now versus just so staged and so crisp and perfect. Like you know it right away, right? When you're scrolling through TikTok, like you just feel it right away where it's like,
and let's focus a little bit more on that, like this whole polished up versus real, right? So there's a platform out there that you just can't miss it these days, right? Because it sucks a lot of our time. If you're on it, if you tried it, it's just it's one of the most effective algorithms out there, and it's TikTok, right? So let's talk about that. So as of last year, social media network TikTok had over 1 billion active monthly users. Now, in comparison to other platforms, I mean, we're talking about it's apples to apples to some of the major platforms out there, right? Like Instagram and Facebook. And so even though, so speaking about the influencer marketing in a sense, so if you're a brand and you're trying to promote your product, you're trying to build a brand and brand awareness, things like that, then Instagram has been that platform, right? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. But TikTok is becoming very quickly, very, very quickly becoming the platform to go in. And like you mentioned, Matt, so we're talking about a different type of content, right? I mean, it's not polished up and it's not prepared. And sometimes you don't need that extra light. And sometimes you don't need that extra fancy lens and a camera and mic and all these things. Sometimes, I mean, the only thing that it takes, I mean, is this right here, right? Is to create something. So does that pose any sort of like challenges? So again, we're a community of hustlers, right? Of craft makers, of entrepreneurs. Does that pose challenge to us? I mean, do we all understand it first? I mean, that's the biggest question I've got here is, do we understand that platform? We're on it. We enjoy it. We love it. How do you create on it if you're a brand, right? Now, that's a pretty big challenge out there, right? And that's why we say it's one of those things that we just kind of have to figure it out, right? Brands are already, and I'm quoting here an article, which, by the way, those articles you can find on Growth Clinic website in the news section. Brands are already changing their strategies and shifting budgets to TikTok. One of the strategy director at the creative agency, Swift, mentioned that. So we see more and more of this trend. And just like what you mentioned right now, again, I'm quoting here from this article and says, the polish of Instagram, I mean, and be attentive to what I'm reading here, is the polish of Instagram has been swapped for realism of TikTok, right? Which may be a difficult pivot for some creators, which you may be one of them, I may be one of them. And I'll be honest, I'm not too far from it. We started doing something, we've started creating short form content and all, but man, it's when you have to be the one, when you have to be a spokesperson, right, which we're going to mention that in a little bit here, it's a shift. You want to polish things up, right? You want to fix your hair. You want to kind of maybe dress up a little bit, but that's not what TikTok is all about. So again, we'll jump into this just one in a second here. So Gen Zs, that's the platform. That's the platform for Gen Zs, Generation Z. So we go from highly curated content, right, polished up, prepared in advance. There's some sort of a strategic kind of background to it, to unfiltered, unapologetic tone, right? And brands have massive opportunity to meet them where they are. It's we're quoting the same article here. So okay, let's dive a little deeper into this. So let's do Instagram versus TikTok, right? guys, just pay
Yeah.
attention. It's 2022, and we're comparing two fairly youthful, relevant platforms out there. Even within those platforms, there's a huge, major shift. That's why we call our title today "Revolution." It is happening, and so point number one is, again, we mentioned a little bit about it: real versus polished, right? And Matt, when we talked about this piece of news when we were preparing, you said soul. I like that word, soul. There's some sort of appeal to it. So what's your thoughts on that? Being real versus being polished?
I think when there's this, going back to that soul right behind it, a lot of times there's a leader, a founder in that company, right, that has that energy and that passion, and that's kind of moving along that brand, right? And you see it where it gets successful, gets bought out, larger company running it, and it just loses its momentum right away, right? Because it doesn't have that same soul, that same energy behind it, right? Driving that authenticity, right, that you were talking about, that seems to be so important with brands. And the more staged you do that, the less of a soul it feels like it has, right? It's just so mechanical in nature there. So, yeah.
And the advice that I guess, if anything, I would give to every single one of us, because all of a sudden, I mean, I used to be the person who kind of did that actively, and I would say, well, here's what I know, here's what you should do. I'll be honest, I mean, I'm humbled a little. We've got a friend of ours and a Growth Clinic mentor, by the way, who's going to be jumping in on our calls here. Yeah. He's in India right now, and he's the creator. He's the influencer. He's a creator machine, is what I call him. Nico, if you're watching this, you're the creator, the content machine. So.
I think he jumped over to Switzerland there. He seems to be hopping all over Europe.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's headed back. So yeah. So
world tour.
The advice that, again, I'm not giving to anybody out there. I'm actually giving this advice to me. I'm learning from somebody like Nico, from somebody from a really solid creators out there, is choose a spokesperson for your content, right? So we want it to be careful. We want it to be curated. We want it to be our marketing director kind of function. But at the same time, your marketing director may not be the most engaging person out there. Let's just be honest. And sometimes they're not, because they have to deal with strategy. They have to deal with analytics. And all of a sudden, I mean, as soon as you kind of shift that personality towards the math and something that's a bit more like concrete and all, you kind of lose that soul sometimes, right? It's that free spirit in a sense. So it may not be a bad idea to choose somebody on your team, maybe outside of your team. Maybe that's a creator you can partner with, by the way. Nico, he's ramping up his operations when it comes to media company he's starting and things like that. So we're going to let him mention more on this. But choose a spokesperson, right? Choose that individual, that face. It's not the cups and a water dripping down. It's like this whole kind of like, again, back in the day kind of commercial. It's like, hey, what's up? How are you doing? I'm drinking something here, and it's pretty awesome. Matt, what do you think? Boom. It's people to people kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, they're bringing their audience with them as well too, right? When you're talking about some of these influencers, micro influencers, right? They've got their own built-in audience as well too, and maybe that's that type of soul or that character, right, that you want to have reflected in your brand, right? They're bringing a certain amount of energy, right, to their content that they have. Maybe it's more professionalism, right? And they're buttoned up, maybe right, for your brand. But that's where, and maybe there's some of that shifting of responsibility as well too, because a lot of companies are like, we really don't want to have our employees, right, just kind of out there winging it, speaking about whatever. Maybe they get political, but if there is a micro influencer out there, well, that's kind of a separate person, right? They have their own opinions on it, and people will realize that that's separate from the company. So. But it can be very challenging, right? We talked about this before, but we're going to be talking about this more in the future too here, where how do you kind of navigate that? Because like you said, there can be a lot of pushback from your company as far as not speaking out, but then you're just kind of sitting there dead in the water too. And politically, there can be a lot of challenges as well too. There can be jealousy, right? Like, who are you, Anton, to be speaking on behalf of the company?
Yeah, I like that.
You're just a so-and-so in this whatever department, right? What gives you the right to be popular right there, right? So you can get into all sorts of politics and, and challenges with that. But it's an opportunity as well too, right? To kind of build the brand for your company, build the brand for yourself as well too, right? Because people are going to follow you. They're going to, like, presumably, right, what you're saying, right? If they're following along with you there. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's talk about good and bad news when it comes to this whole transition, that revolution to more organic and more authentic, more unapologetic content, right? So the cost of production. So if we're talking about TikTok as a platform, right, there are a lot of great tools out there, creative tools that you can kind of use, and filters and music and cuts and things like that. It does help you almost like automatically edit some of the pieces of content you post out there. And there's no expectation of any sort of intro, logo, visual. Sometimes it's really as simple as kind of grabbing your phone and just kind of posting it out there, which again, I'm preaching to myself here first. Trust me. So cost of production is way lower than, you don't have to overthink it. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to script it. It's just it's out there, and it needs to be good. So cost of production low. Your marketing budgets, you can stretch them. Now like crazy. So it's more of investment of energy now versus money, right? Which that already has become a long time ago, but it's even more today. It's investment of energy, not money.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tools for a second, right? So we mentioned a little bit about it. The editing tools and things like that. You used to need a powerful computer, put a Adobe Premiere on it, right? Edit that long episode. Finally, once it's over, post it out there, things like that. Now it's almost like our expectation is, as soon as I see something that's been color corrected, I feel like this is not authentic. Like somebody spent too much time on this. What do you want? Like you paid somebody to edit this video. What do you want from me? Like, get out of my feed, that kind of thing. I mean, really, right?
Right.
Versus like that guy who literally just woke up and picked up a phone. He doesn't want, he wants nothing from me. I trust him immediately. Now, his content may be good or not, and your content better be good. But the trust, there's something about the trust. And think about it. We're going to talk a little bit about it. This whole old truth is still the truth, right? And the old truth is, business is built on trust. It's people to people, right? So that's the main point. You need to win people's trust, and there's just a new way to do it. So anything about the tools, Matt? What's your thoughts? Tools. I mean, again,
well, we're doing kind of head to head there, right? TikTok versus Instagram, right? Some things we've noticed, we've complained about is TikTok is excellent as far as kind of the back end of the video editing, sound, right, bringing in different audio songs like that, right, to it. Green screens behind you, right? Maybe you've got a video going, but you also want to be that kind of talking head in the corner there as well too, right? Explaining, pointing to it there. So they seem to really just jump out there big time and keep doubling down in that area. Where meanwhile, right, Instagram here, just this spring, right, we were just complaining as far as like, it just wasn't working in Instagram for Reels. There was all these glitchy things, right? You do your research out there, like, you got 4 or 5 accounts going, but 3 of them just don't have that basic feature to it, and there's no like logic behind why it's not.
And good luck trying to reach out to support and ask them a question why and why not and things like that. I mean, good luck.
And you rewind on Instagram, right? It was based on just like basically a pretty picture that was out there, right? Like it was just kind of a nice picture that you would put out there, food, entertainment, something you were doing, and then kind of TikTok comes along, right, and just picture, right? Like picture is boring, right? Let's do video. Let's really amp it up, right? So that's where they've just come in so strong. And of course, Instagram trying to catch up, right? Facebook catch up on these things, trying to integrate Facebook and Instagram, have a cohesive strategy, right? You've got Meta Universe going on, right? Distracting Facebook, right? Which of course owns Instagram. So, it seems like head-to-head comparisons there, right? That's where TikTok really is jumping ahead as far as some of these in-app video editing features where, like, forget about using Adobe Premiere or, any of that software, just right from your phone, right? Like you're saying, the quality of the phone has gone up so much as well too, that's really about kind of all you need, and the AI behind that technology too, right? To, hey, brighten up your face, right? Dim the background, like if you're on a video call, right? Those features are rolling out on mobile. So
definitely.
It's just getting quicker.
Yeah, definitely. And so the key word that I'm thinking about here is once you start saying, okay, less tools, right? Or tools are provided, right? No equipment is needed. No special expertise is needed. I mean, maybe a younger person who knows how to put all these graphics in there. But on top of that, what I'm really hearing is less friction, right?
Yeah.
Again,
good point.
Good versus bad news. Guys, it has never been easier to create content as it is today. And on top of that, what you create is good regardless of how much time you spend on it. And that's it just needs to be, you just need to be a bit more strategic on it, right? And so when it comes to, okay, you are a business, right? You are a church. You're running for office. You're a for-profit, non-profit, governmental, NGO. Your department head. You're trying to accomplish something, right? You've got an objective, a business objective. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. And all of a sudden, you've got these platforms, you've got these ways, you've got this revolution, right? It's right here in the title, revolution, going on. So let's think of it from that perspective. Does it get more expensive or not? So Matt, you've got some numbers out there, right? So is it cheaper to work with micro-influencers on TikTok versus Instagram? The answer that I found is yes. And a lot of big brands are doubling down on that big time. And those are the smart companies. Now, those are the companies that you compete with. Just think about it. So it's not investment of money. It's investment of energy. You just have to become just as smart, if not smarter, than your competition. Think about that.
Yeah. And is your business going to work directly with them? Or if you're at scale too, right? You're a larger company, maybe it still is an ad agency, but that is their specialty, right? Is finding this talent, is kind of matching up the personality of your company, your brand, right, with the right micro influencer, right? And when we're talking micro influencer, I don't know if there's a strict definition of that, right? But we're talking like what, 10,000, 100,000 followers, not Kim Kardashian numbers here, right? But it's combination, right, of multiple of those individuals, whatever you choose, whatever the strategy is, right? Really is a good chunk, is a good block, is new viewers, right? Maybe they're at that right age, that right target. To bring them in.
And just keep in mind that any sort of audience that your micro influencer or a larger size influencer has is built on trust, right? So your brand deals, I think, will be more and more of it needs to be organic to the influencer, right? For them to start promoting and partnering with your brand. So I think those are the touch points that I would be strategic about and say, instead of, well, I've got my product, can you help me sell it? A better or a well-developed or mature influencer is going to say, well, how's it going to benefit my audience, right? It's not just how much money. Mature influencers, I mean, smart influencers, long-term thinker kind of influencer, they'll say, how does it benefit my audience? And if you're selling something or your product or service is not something that's relevant, one, it's not consistent, two, it's some sort of a half-baked situation, they may say, you know what, the money sounds really good. I mean, I hate to say it, but why don't you figure it out first? And then call me. I'm all ears. Like, just let me know. We'll talk more. You may hear something like that, so don't get offended. You're wonderful. You're a wonderful company, and your product and service is remarkable, of course, but it may not serve the audience of a particular influencer well.
Those influencers have their own brand to protect as well too, exactly. Right? So yeah.
So think of it really in terms of partnership. You're not hiring. It's not a let me put $1,000 and let me get this many clicks. Those are partnerships. Those are human interactions. I mean, again, we're going a little bit away from. And by the way, we're going to talk. I know, Matt, you've got some numbers on this, but CPMs, CPCs, and things like that. How much does it cost for each platform to run your ad and things like that? Which TikTok is, by the way, it's remarkable when it comes to that. But speaking for just 1 second here about these partnerships with influencers you can build out there, those are people. Don't treat them like they're numbers, and don't throw $1,000 at them and say, give me this because I want it. Those are partnerships. I mean, become friends with them and give them something, add value. Send them that free product of yours. Get them excited about something. I mean, invite them to your events and stuff. I mean, when they get to be invited to your event, I mean, trust me, they're gonna bring their phone with them. And influencer plus phone, it's content. So it's marketing opportunity. So treat them well. Those are human beings. So Matt, what's our thing on TikTok versus maybe other platforms out there, and how much does it cost to run ads on platforms?
Yeah, some of the numbers there. And you're talking about, the industry kind of divides some of this up. Kind of the old school method is working media, right, versus non-working. So non-working is kind of like that production cost to get things set up and strategy around it. And historically, that could be like 20%. Like that was a big chunk, right, when you're talking a big company of that, right? So now you can push that hopefully more towards influencers, like assets that are going to help you directly reach consumers out there, right? So we look at some of the costs that are out there, and they fluctuate, right? Because this is more of an auction basis. Old school days, those were determined ahead of time. You paid a certain amount. Your agencies negotiated it with the different NBC, the different channels that were out there. Different. It's more auction driven. So that's where some years, like when it's an election year, well, prices are probably going to be higher, right? Because you have all these politicians out there that are constantly running ads, and it's Super Bowl time, right? So you kind of have to adjust your strategy around different times of the year where it makes sense for your brand, right? But just on a comparison basis here, right? You were talking about Instagram. They use the standard there, right? That CPM, right? So you're talking about the cost per thousand, right? And there's impressions is kind of one of the just kind of general metrics that is out there, right? And that's in the neighborhood. Facebook here, $7, Instagram, $8 per 1,000 impressions, right? So you're really talking about less than a penny for each impression. But you've got impressions aren't all created equal either, right? So an impression of a video can be much more powerful, right, than an impression for, just a picture that's out there. Right. So you've got it up here. Right. LinkedIn, we're going to talk about that a little bit, is actually at the lower end right now, or just impressions. Right. But a lot of times you want action to take place from that. Right. You want them to click on a link, go to your website, make a purchase, set up a deal. And that's where it does change here. And that's the metrics really get swapped around here when you're talking about that cost per click, right? Another metric out there, right? Are you clicking, you take some action on it. So there, LinkedIn is at $5.26 per click versus Facebook is at 97 cents because maybe it's for some little widget thing. But on LinkedIn, hey, this could be for business to business related, right? It could be something, a much larger purchase, much larger opportunity. Well, LinkedIn's taking advantage of that, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm thinking why? Like when you're on Facebook, are you thinking about work? Probably not. So it becomes more of interruption marketing, right? And so all of a sudden, if I see your video and it doesn't go along with my feed, and of course it doesn't, then I get frustrated. I don't like it. You create a negative impression. They're like, okay, our clicks are going to be cheap. So, okay, get some clicks. Then LinkedIn is like, they're valuing their audience. I mean, see, it's one of those things where they say, it's a smaller group of people, but it's a very specific group of people. Those are professionals, right? And if somebody clicks on it, they're in the mojo of I'm here doing work essentially, or I'm here. I don't mind connecting with other businesses, and all of a sudden, your brand, your business, your organization, your donation request, your run for office request pops up. Yeah, it's a bit more organic. I think that's why there's a cost out there. I think it's still pretty overpriced. I mean, $5 for a click, or $3, right? $3 for a click.
No, $5.
$5. Yeah, $5 for a click. I mean,
but that's kind of an average, right? Depending on how specific they're targeted, right? I mean, if you're selling a piece of equipment, right, and business to business, that could be $250,000, right?
Yeah.
And you've got an ad budget out there. We were talking earlier. You go to some of these trade shows, you can drop $250,000 like no problem, right? Going to these big trade shows in Chicago and big cities around the world, moving all this major equipment there, dealing with the union labor to set these things, and it just gets expensive. So very interesting as far as the opportunities there. If you want, we can jump right in here as far as some of these metrics around LinkedIn here that we thought was pretty interesting here was, these platforms are massive. They're global across the board, right? That may or may not be relevant to you. Facebook is very focused on the local market, right? Like the plumber that's in your zip code that's nearby you, right? Like connecting you to those businesses closer to you here, right? But in total here, Instagram, 1.4 billion. Facebook, there's 1.6 billion on every single day, right? There's about 3 billion that are signed up. TikTok, plus billion, more focus in the US, right? Like with TikTok, it's kind of different with countries there and how that's set up there. But 12 million here on LinkedIn signaling they're available to work, right? Because we were talking about, hey, who's looking for work? Who's looking for opportunity? There's 12 million people on the platform, right, that are open to that. The demographic breakdown, 57% men, 43% women, 60% are between ages 25 and 34, right? So really in that like core working skews a little bit younger, right? In the overall work demographic there. There's 49 million here use it to search for jobs each week, right?
That's crazy.
Like people are
49
curious.
million people are looking for jobs each week.
But it's a huge platform out there, right? For it. So get this: 6 people are hired per minute from LinkedIn.
That's crazy.
77 job applications are submitted on LinkedIn every second, right? Not every hour, every minute, every second are posted out there for it, right? So 16% of the US users log on every day. I use it every day. It's both professional, it's both kind of entertaining as well too, right? To see what's going on.
And it's value add versus just here's a bunch of nonsense.
Articles like, Harvard Business Review, they've got tons of great, interesting articles that are out there, right? So you feel different, right? After going through LinkedIn versus just kind of scrolling around on Facebook or TikTok and just kind of surfing along there. What else here? 30% of the company's engagement on LinkedIn come from employees. So LinkedIn posts with pictures have 2 times the engagement. Brands have a 33% increase in purchase intent resulting from exposure on ads on LinkedIn. So let's bring this together there, Anton, as far as how does this relate to kind of your business, right? So if you're a small business owner, right, what does kind of all this mean? Maybe starting with employees, right? I mean, my own thoughts are hey, you need to be having your employees on LinkedIn, right? Very clear. We're posting content out there. It's very important that you share that content, right? Like why wouldn't you do that? And I don't see that very often. It just feels like marketing might put something out there and it just organization doesn't always get behind it. And I see that consistently with a lot of different brands.
That is so interesting.
I don't know. Maybe we'll dive into that a little bit deeper there in the future, but it's a huge opportunity for those that do leverage it and share it out there because the payback on that is going to be so great. And we've got some great companies in Chattanooga that do phenomenal job at that. Steam Logistics, right, where they've grown sales from 100 million up to almost $1 billion run rate per year here, and they very much encourage their employees to be out there, and they're actively recruiting as well too, right? They're hiring in more and more. They need help with that, and that just validates your brand more, right? When people are sharing the things that they like about the company, right? And the opportunity, and it's very authentic. Going back to what you were saying. I don't know. Any other opportunities you see out there as well too there for LinkedIn for small or large businesses or?
Yeah, no, I just see, I think that it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's hard not to see it. It's a trend of just growth and more engagement. And I see just a number of just engagement numbers, which again, not your ultimate metric, but that's what feeds into your ultimate KPI if you're effectively creating your customer journey. So no, it's growing and there's lots of opportunities. And I think if you're in business to business, even if you are say you've got a product or a service for professionals, I mean they're all humans. I mean, right? So you can essentially there's lots and lots of things out there that could be just think about the fact that they're all in a work mode in a sense, so to say, right? They go into their profile. Oh, I've got my tie. Still have it. Okay, I got to swap it up, but I still have my picture out there with a tie. And all of a sudden, you suggesting them something like a massage, relaxing therapy, floating therapy, cryotherapy. All of a sudden, it's like they're in the work mode, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be a work-related product. It'd be like, oh yeah, I'm working too much. Like, let me go and find an opportunity here locally to go and get my cryotherapy kind of going. So it's just a great opportunity out there. So for sure,
it's a good point about it being less kind of formal, because I think it used to be, at least for me historically, right? Like, you didn't interact with other competitors or brands out there. And I feel very comfortable in doing that now. And they know, right? You've got your titles up there, or projects you're working on, or you're clear with them on what you're doing. But it's kind of breaking down some of those walls, right? It's kind of taking off those ties, that formality to engage, because a lot of times there is opportunities with your competitors. And I'm not talking about like collusion and price fixing, but it's an industry that, hey, if we work together, right, we can elevate this industry together. Steam Logistics, again, they're working with all these different companies to, like, let's end these non-competes. It's stupid. It's bad for the individuals, the employees. Let's get rid of that. Let's create a group here together, right, and move the industry forward. And they benefit from that probably disproportionately as well too, by taking the leadership. But hopefully the whole industry, raises from that. It's better for workers, for employees, and
it's like Tesla saying that our patents are available for all the rest of the manufacturing, and the rest of the world just kind of looks at it and says, "Well, that's if I was a business owner, I wouldn't do that." But there's some sort of like Gen Z. Again, we're talking about this this revolution of more organicness to life, right? That's cool. You trust the brand. You want that brand to be this way. It's good. It's not the corporate greed. It's not the, like, as a human being, if I wasn't interested in the bottom line every single day and every single time and all, I probably would do that. If I invent something and it's cool and it's useful, why don't we all do that? It's just a wonderful, wonderful way to do it. Going back to what we were talking about as far as organic content, things like that. So, man, I appreciate all the stats here you pulled in as far as the LinkedIn and stuff. It was just fascinating stuff. Sure. Lots of engagement, lots of interesting dynamics kind of happening with the LinkedIn platform. So, is this a platform for organic content? I mean, we're kind of dipping our toes in it, right, and things like that. But at the same time, that organicness, I think it's inevitable. And again, we call it revolution because again, it's not just one platform. It's not just, well, for fun I go here and for work I go here. I think just as a society, after a pendulum swing, right, where the pendulum goes from polished up. And old white guys were the ones to tell you what to do and things like that. And so if you didn't like that, well, leave. Today, again, with a shortage of labor and things like that, it's like we want for you to stay. We want for you to stick around. Let me know. Let's figure it out. Let's create work environment that's more susceptible to you being more productive. And we don't like this whole forcing an individual into things. This is kind of like it's got this air of the past. Right, it smells old school. it's like this old chest that you open up and there's this old smell to it. That's this whole coercion. That's the whole forcing. And again, this content stuff that we're talking about, this is not it. I mean, it's not even TikTok. It's not even content. It's Gen Z, just finally getting a say in how this world is going to run. And to be completely honest, I am extremely, extremely optimistic in terms of this world is going to be a lot better with Gen Zs running companies because I see less coercion and I see more sustainable practices when it comes to many, many things. Environmental, any sort of policies when it comes to human resources, profit, things like that. I mean, I think we're going to see lots and lots of wonderful things. So, baby boomers, great. It was time to do what you did. Now, millennials, including Matt, you and I, texters, right? We're not Gen Zs. Let's be very clear on this. We're texters, right? They are. Let me pick up a phone and send somebody a video message, right? It's a whole different beast out there. It's the largest market segment out there ever lived. Just think about it. And they are the ones who buy properties, real estate. They finish schools, They're giving birth to babies, and they're going to be running companies. They're going to be your manager soon. And I just think, I just can't help it, but it's going to be a positive.
I think it's that you got to put that carrot out there, right, versus a stick, because people have choices now, right? Unemployment is at record low levels.
At 3%,
Tons of open positions out there that pay very well, right? So you're gonna have to create some type of a culture and motivation, and it might not even be money, right? Like you can put some some huge numbers out there, but it just might not be motivating enough for people, right, to bring their full energy to the table on it. So it's different for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so let me bring up another piece of news here that I wanted to share with you guys is so kind of going along with what we were saying here. So all right.
While you're loading that up there too, I think the interesting thing to talk about here, maybe we'll talk about it more in a future episode, is those barriers on LinkedIn. Because, if you're on Facebook and it's kind of private and maybe you just have only your family and things and you're just going to post a few pictures, that's all good and fine, right? But, it's almost like giving a live presentation out there, right, to this massive audience when you put content out there. If you put video out there on LinkedIn, you don't see it hardly at all. There's very few individuals that I follow that put it out there. And I think those that do, it really stands out. And there's some big opportunity there in doing that. So, I know we're going to be talking a lot about this, in the future here. And a lot of different angles to it. But the sooner the better on it, right? Because after a while, right, like the market's going to adapt, more people are going to come in, it's going to get busier, but now's the opportunity to start building up that audience. But you're going to kind of have to put yourself out there a little bit, right, in some way, with either yourself preferably or your content, right? You're going to have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're going to go back to this whole creating content and things like that here in just 1 second. So just another piece of data point, let's put it this way, to feed into this conversation about revolution and things like that, which is way bigger than content. But let's focus on content here for just 1 second. I'm quoting this piece of news, which you can find it where? Growth.clinic, right? Remember? News section. So I'm not talking to you, Matt, by the way. I'm looking at you, but I know where you know where to find it, but I just...
you made me think there.
Yeah. Sounds good. A screenshot of the feature posted by an app researcher, Alessandro Paluzzi, described IG Candid Challenges. Instagram Candid Challenges. Now, this test is not out publicly, but they're internally testing it. With one of them depicting getting a message at a random time in the day, having only 2 minutes to capture and share a photo. A format pioneered by quickly growing social network Be Real. What do you guys see here? I think that's a very important piece of news here. And so we know, it's not new at all that Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all major platforms out there, are trying to kind of steal a piece of the pie that TikTok has grabbed off of their table. And they're saying short form content, fun, upbeat, algorithmic, heavily algorithmic. And candid, right? Unapologetic, like we said in the beginning. And Instagram is saying, okay, I think people are stuck with this mentality that Instagram needs to be polished up. And they're basically saying, we're kind of late for this revolution that TikTok and Gen Zs have started. How in the world do we push our creators to go away from more polished up a piece of content to more candid, more unapologetic, more cool, more provocative, And so I think this is a very important piece of information. The company told Engadget that the experiment is an internal prototype and not testing externally. We have reached out to Instagram to find more details, blah, blah, but they haven't gotten any sort of feedback from them. So let's go back to our revolution and this whole idea that certain things are shifting and you better be on the top of that wave, because that wave is going to carry a lot of us kind of forward with it. So let's talk about advices here, right? So what can, practically speaking, right, what can an entrepreneur, business owner, department head, hustler do practically? Like, what should I do? So the first thing that I would say is don't overthink, right? Once you start spending too much time thinking about the content, it will not come across as genuine, right? I'm preaching to myself here first. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm very used to let me fix my hair. Let me put a different shirt on, and let me go to a place where you've got a nice background. See, I put my plant here and stuff. This is not TikTok. This is polished. This is polished up. Like, Matt, your shot looks so cool that it's just this is where we are stuck in a sense. I mean, and I can help it. I'll buy a better mic because I want the audio to be there. It's almost like out of respect to the audience, right? But TikTok is like, your phone is enough. Your phone is great. So don't overthink it. As soon as you start spending too much time thinking about it, you're probably kind of getting behind, right? So
yeah.
But yeah,
you can't really fake this either, which is kind of interesting with, let's say, LinkedIn in particular. So let's say you're in sales, right? You've made your way up, and you're VP of sales there. Well, and now you switch companies, situation changes. If you don't have a LinkedIn following, right, and now you want to get into it, well, maybe you only have 100 or 200 connections, right? But do you really want to be influencing the industry and kind of taking that weight with you when you go on to the next role? And that just takes time, right? And LinkedIn is very long-term focused. And so it can be very difficult, right, to kind of build up that audience. Other platforms, different situation there, right? I know we're kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit here, but it's interesting to see the contrast, the contrast between the two. So that's where it takes time. But another thing you can do is just kind of repost content that's out there as well too. So maybe it's other people that you follow in the industry that you want to respect, you're showing support of them by doing that, right? You're not asking anything back. You're just sharing hopefully what's great content from them. And then hopefully in the future, right, as you start taking some of those next steps as well too, right, then hopefully they'll reciprocate, right, and see that you've been doing that and that you care and that, you're commenting on their posts that they have out there as well too, right, and supporting them. So yeah, another way to kind of get the ball rolling on this.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point. What I would, my 2 cents to add into this as far as what's practical advice in terms of content and things like that, your office, right? Turn your office or start thinking about your office as a studio. That's it. You are a media company. You will be producing content, and it will be produced, especially if you've got employees, if you've got a little bit of a team walking around doing stuff, it will be produced in closets and in every corner of your office. So polish it up, light it up. I think that's an important piece when it comes to, when we say not polished, we're not actually talking about, like, again, you don't want to roll out of your bed and get in your PJs and just kind of start and have a bad lighting and things like that, because that still matters, right? You just don't want to focus. That's not a focus anymore, which is great. But your office is your studio, so think about it. Think about the lighting, and think about this closet. You know what I'm talking about? That closet, because people will be making fun and taking videos there. Just clean it up. Like, really as simple as that. So your office is your studio. So
yeah, yep.
Which makes me think
it can be these little things as well too, right? Somebody in the industry there, they had a post where they spent tons of money on all this different social media and trying to get it viral and do these different things. The one that goes viral is the one of the machine that's cutting their flyers. Right, yeah. So their flyers are just in the background, and they get like 1.4 million views, right? And they're like,
because why not?
it's just cutting paper, right? But people were just kind of interesting, like,
it's definitely TikTok content, yeah.
So maybe it's something in your business that you might not, you're so used to it, but maybe it is something that's interesting out there to other people, right? And you don't always know. Sometimes, like we talk about it, it's like playing the lottery, playing the slot machine. Sometimes you just pull it, right? And that one takes off. So
so practice, right? Go practice. Go try it. Go out there. I think that's an excellent point. So let me expand a little bit maybe on this. So there may be a corner in your office, right, where content will be filmed. Now, it could be unintentional, right, or it could be intentional. So unintentional is what you're referring to, where you show process, right? A piece of a process, and it's fascinating to people that don't work in your industry, right? Be it medical, be it any sort of like publishing, things like that. But what if it's intentional? What if you create a space out there and you say, guys, this is a TikTok area, and we see more and more of that. It's bright green couch, big sign, just very gently, like very kind of subliminal kind of thing. Like your logo is in the back, just happens to be there. Be strategic about it. Again, we're not saying don't. don't polish it up, don't overthink it, but be strategic about it. You've got a business objective to be served, right? So clean your office, but then also be ready for that little corner and for content to be created at any sort of any point in time. So Matt, question to you. So you run a company, right? You've got employees. You want to what's the conversation should be as far as your team? Like, should I encourage my team to create a bunch of TikToks and post them on maybe their personal or my company's? Like, and how quickly that can get out of hands? Like, what should I do? I mean, that's a pretty complex thing to do. What would you do?
It is complex, right? Like, depending on the size of the organization, are you setting the example too? Like, is it fun? Like, do people see you out there? That's where it gets tricky. Are you trying to portray this very professional image, right? If you're in banking, I don't know about doing like all these silly things, right? Like maybe in 5 or 10 years, maybe that's the norm, but it's not quite the norm yet, right? Like, you're seeing the banker ties kind of come off and the suit jackets, right? Like keeping a little bit more real. But what is that example that you want to set, right, for your organization? And if you can do that yourself, right, I think that's first place to start, right? And then bring other people into it. Because if you just, that's where it gets a little bit awkward, complicated, where like, depending on the platform, like that could just be their platform. That's their oasis. Like that's for them and their friends. And now you're like pushing them to be on it. LinkedIn, I feel like, is a little bit different there, right? Where it's like, you're an employee of the company, right? Your job is to promote the company. Why wouldn't you promote that on a professional platform? And, you know, if the company is stepping up, right, there's these different kind of memberships for LinkedIn, right? For, you know, sales, for if you're recruiting, right, to pay for that. If the company is paying for that as well, too, right? I think there is some expectation that as an employee, why wouldn't you be out there speaking on behalf of your company? Do they have the right tools for it, right? Is it some rinky-dink old school phone that they have, right? Like, all right, like maybe, like you said, it can be authentic, but you still want it to look good as well, too, right? Like ideally. So, yeah, do you have those lights around the office? Do you talk about it as well, too, right? Like, do you train each other, kind of cross-train? Like, how did you do that video, right? Like, I'll text you sometime, like, this was a cool video I was watching. I'm like, how did they do this lighting here? Or was this like a lug? Was this like posts? Did they clean this up? Or to like, how do we match that? And that's where, you know, hopefully, you know, by working together, right, we level each other up in these different areas, right? To, you know, call it punch up, right? Like you're trying to elevate it up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, look, what you just mentioned. I think it's not a bad idea to find somebody within an organization or outside. And I'm winking at Nico here because he's ramping up with something here also interesting. We'll let him share it next time. Find somebody inside of your organization or outside who is instinctively great at this, at creating unapologetic, not polished, but great engaging content. And maybe let that younger person, maybe fairly new individual within the company, you know, give them that opportunity to mentor and train the rest on that intuitive, like something that it's kind of hard to be learned, right? So when I think about encouragement of your team to do certain things, and giving them certain instruction, I think that definitely helps. That instruction, again, that's structure, right? Again, it's that chest that smells really bad, structure. Let's structure things out, and so people will know how to do certain things and all. I think that's very important, because my next point is coming up here. Well, you'll see why. So structure is great, but I think getting one or maybe a couple of individuals who organically understand this, and maybe they can, like you said, they can showcase, maybe they can be an example, be a leader when it comes to that particular part. And trust me, that person will have a great career within your company, and so keep them there. So, but here's the thing. If we start encouraging folks to start posting out there on our behalf, right, on their personal TikToks and things like that. Next, I mean, I'll film a TikTok. I mean, just think about it, right? I'll record a TikTok. I'll post it on my personal page, right? I haven't asked my manager about it, right? I mean, they said, hey, guys, just go post it out there. It gets 5 million views. I mean, because why not, right? But then something about it, like maybe I mention a customer of our company, maybe I mention a project, and all of a sudden, I mean, what are we getting ourselves in here? So this is the part where kind of, those 6 hats book, let's take off this optimistic hat here. It's like, oh, take that, great. Let's put that, what is it, the black one? It's called risk. So let's start thinking about, like, we're a risk analyzer right now. What are the risks? I mean, is there any sort of legal trouble we can get ourselves in? And what should we do with this, Matt?
Well, tons of legal trouble, right, that you could get into. Like we were talking about the difference in the generations, too, where Gen Z isn't necessarily too fond that their parents were out there, right, posting all these pictures of them growing up throughout their life, and there's this big trail out there. Like, a lot of them are just shutting that down, kind of like they're out with friends. Like, they tend to be a little bit more conscious, right, as far as, like, not just randomly posting their friend because, like, they just don't know, right? Like, maybe they're working remotely or supposed to be working remotely, right? Or they just, the privacy is a major issue, right? With, I think, a lot of people right now, right? But particularly some of these younger generations as well, too, right? We might think that they're all out there doing all these posts and everything, but it's those dynamics have really, really changed, and in that regards there. So, yeah, you were talking about, saying, okay, the boss, it's great to set the example, but it's kind of like when the boss throws a party, right? Like, you could be a cool person individually or whatever, but it's kind of different when you go to your boss's party, right, versus somebody else's party and they're throwing it and it's kind of away from work. So I like your point there, as far as, somebody else kind of brings in a lot more legitimacy, that they have the following already, right? That's their specialty, maybe that they specialize in a little bit more. Maybe you're great at LinkedIn, but you know what? There's a bunch of other platforms out there as well for it. Legally, boy, there's some landmines there as well, but it's all about managing the risk, right? And really thinking through that risk with your organization. If you're at an earlier stage startup, you only have a customer or two, who cares, right? You're just trying to get attention out there, right? Yeah. If you have a well-oiled machine and you don't need to be taking this type of risk, maybe it's a different situation than in that context, right?
I wonder how legal aspect of running a business will change, because all of a sudden you need an attorney, right, who would review certain pieces of content, and you want it to run by somebody. So maybe your marketing budget will shift towards legal, and say, hey, now that the creating content gets so much less, right? For our budget is doesn't have to be that big, but I mean, it's great that it's there. What about legal, right? So do we need an attorney to just kind of review our content out there and say, okay, this is kind of troublesome. Okay, I wouldn't do this, and let me advise you because of such and such. And so I think that's really not a bad idea. I'm also thinking, just kind of like thinking out loud here, how will like court system change on that? Because those Gen Zs are going to be juries at some point, right? And a court case will be brought before them, and they'll say, well, your employee said such and such about our company because we suck, and those juries, they're a bunch of Gen Zs. They'll be like, you know what? There's no trouble here. That's true. And all of a sudden, I wonder how judicial system, legal system will change along with it. So it's revolution, guys. Again, make no mistake, because we don't know the implications. We're barely scratching the surface of what's happening today. Barely. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen in 10 years? How will this change? How will this pendulum swing change everything that surrounds us? Yeah.
Yeah. Who was it? There was a prime minister this last week there that was caught out. She was just partying with her friends, right? But she was a prime minister, female.
Oh, yeah. Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Slovakia, one of those,
I forget where it was there, right? But a lot of people were just like, she's out with her friends, like she's not allowed to have a little bit of fun. That's where it's this interesting dilemma, right, between historically, right, certain expectations versus like we're all real and we're all human, and are people not allowed to be authentic at times, right, with their close friends like that there. Like you're saying, hey, have legal involved, but that's where, like, are people following along on your content that's out there? And maybe it's not an emergency, but it's a discussion, right? Where like, hey, like you're posting some great content here. Hey, watch out for, if you're out with, you're at a trade show, you're with another competitor, you're talking about products being, maybe they should be more expensive. Like, okay, that might get into price fixing type territory, right? Like just examples like that, right? Where hopefully people are kind of maybe of influence weighing in on that. And, everybody might have an opinion on it, right? But that's where at the end of the day, the decision makers, the leaders, right, they've got to kind of manage that risk tolerance levels for the organization.
And I do expect for it to be a bit more of a kind of trial and error, because again, we're gonna test the boundaries, because we're definitely pushing towards the edge, and nobody knows where that edge is. And so, but it's excellent point. So Matt, let's shift to our kind of last portion here that we wanted to kind of wrap it up with. We've discussed. Right, there's revolution happening, guys. If you're not noticing it, we're all in big trouble because that's it's happening. It already happened. We're just catching on to this. Instagram is catching on to this. Big, large companies, just like Nokia's and Blockbusters of the world, didn't catch on to certain things. You may not be catching on to this particular part. It's crucial. It's really important. But so. There's a lot of good and optimistic kind of things happening, easy to create content, things like that. There's a lot of complexities like legal, right? And after all, I mean, you may say, oh my goodness, another revolution, another way, another learning opportunity, another growth opportunity. By the way, this is what we're calling this environment here, right? Yeah. It's okay not to be okay. So it's okay to have questions. It's okay to, like, you don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing at times. I mean, and that's totally fine. But here's the thing. I kind of wanted for us to wrap this whole conversation with this really kind of simple idea that the old truth will always be the truth. And what are we talking about here is we talked about trust initially, right, in the beginning of this conversation. So trust is still the currency of business, right? You still run on trust. It's human beings with human beings. It's just the Generation Z, again, largest market segment out there, they're a lot more authentic. They don't like suit and tie. They don't like things being a certain way that you're so used to being. But at the same time, they're human beings, and they appreciate. I think they're more than anybody, by the way. And maybe let me even put it this way: more than anybody out there, more than other groups of people, appreciate authenticity and things like that. And maybe this is a wake-up call for each one of us who's just kind of BSing out there. Who's a bit more like, I'm great. Everything's fine. Our company's growing. Yay. Gen Zs are like, all right, next. Swipe up. Like, tune this guy out. Bye.
Next job. Yep.
Yeah. And maybe this is again, old truth is still the truth. Like, everything that's been human about us, about our experiences, about the way you've built your business in the past, still remains. Nothing has changed. It's a revolution maybe of a package, so to say, is what I would call it. Maybe a book cover. Book gets a new cover, and the content gets to be filmed and done a certain way. But the substance of it, the core of it, the soul. I like the word that you brought here in this conversation. Soul, right? Appeal. Oh, it's still the same. It will never change. We're human beings, right? There's some sort of natural laws that run in the background of this life. It's like gravity. You just can't change it. So maybe it's an opportunity to kind of go back and rethink how you can be a bit more of a human, and how your brand could be a bit more of a problem solving initiative. Project, test. Kind of like what we do with this initiative here. This is just a big test. I mean, I'll be the first one to say it, right? This is just a big test. We don't know what we're doing. We're just testing. We like these conversations. I think Matt and I, we like it more than maybe even our audience sometimes. But it's just it's never final. Let me put it this way, I guess. So just keep running your larger company as you did when it was smaller. Right? A bit more agile, a bit more, what am I trying to say here, Matt? Like a bit more, I'm trying to find words.
You want that flow, right? Like you just don't want to be weighed down by that. It just happens, right?
Yeah.
Business.
Don't turn into a big ship that's hard to steer. Remain the small boat. Get more powerful and put some big guns on your small boat, but remain that small boat and navigate these things fairly quickly, because if you don't, again, revolution is it already happened. So we just hope that you're on top of it and you ride that wave versus being under the wave. So
yeah, and it's still hard work at the end of the day too, right? Like we're talking about keeping it real, authentic, kind of going with the flow there too. But that what you're portraying out there, but it's still going to be a lot of hard work behind the scenes as well too. But a lot of it's attitude, right? A lot of it's that glass is half full or it's half empty, right? And hopefully that attitude, that view, right? That, hey, this glass is half full. Hopefully that's the part that's playing out, right? In your personality and your persona, right? That you have out there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, I mean, we definitely can stretch this a lot longer, and hopefully you're enjoying this. So if you've been riding in the car, great. We're glad you're listening to it, not watching to us as you're speaking right now. If you're in the gym, hopefully you had some value in this. And I'm actually proud of you. And by the way, kind of dovetailing into our next conversation about Daniel and optimizing yourself, I'm proud of you if you're at the gym and you've listened to the end of this, because you've worked out for 1 hour exactly. So awesome. Keep it up. Tell us a little bit more about how you've done it and what you get out of this, and how you you become more consistent with exercise and things like that. So again, we're all ears. Questions, comments, anything like that always kind of goes, always welcomed here. We're learning just like you. This is why we call it Growth Clinic. We are all in this kind of growth mode, and we're all learning here. So Matt, unless you have anything else to add, we can.
Yeah, that's great. Enjoyed the conversation there as always, Anton. But there's a lot more, of course, that we can dig in further on, right? And I'm very much looking forward to getting Daniel, a lot of the other guests that we have lined up there, and just bringing in, right, those following along, right, to just answer a lot of questions, right? We bounce out there, we might just go live, right, and just start answering questions, right? Sometimes people just need a sounding board, right, for an idea that they've had. You can talk about it inside your company all you want, but sometimes you just need an outside take on it, and ask away here in the future here. We love to do those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely. So again, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Matt, thanks a lot for joining me tonight. If you at some point go on vacation or something, I don't know what I would do. This is just became such an organic thing. Speaking about organic, so great energy, great company. So I appreciate it. So hopefully you stay dry out there. You stay warm out there. It's kind of getting a little cool. Well, warm, yeah. It's getting a little cooler, but yeah. So anyway, guys, good to have you here. Stay tuned for more, and we'll catch up next time. See ya.
See ya.